Okay, thank you so much for joining us. So we're doing a series of panels this morning on Web3. I'm Vickie Nauman. I run a consultancy called CrossBorderWorks. So I sit in between music and tech companies, mostly helping tech companies make sense of the music industry. And I'm super excited for this because Richard Burgess and I started talking a couple months ago about how we both felt like independent labels and independent artists are so well poised for Web3 and for this next wave of opportunities that are coming ahead. And so we set up 3 panels to talk about this with experts in the space. We just did one on fan engagement, which was really kind of accentuating that in our current world, it's much more about labels and publishers licensing entire catalogs to platforms, having followers, not necessarily engaged fans. And this next wave is really taking things deeper. And it's much more artist-led, and it's also bringing fans much, much closer to, participating with something about the creative process. So this panel is kind of the next part of the chain, which is monetization, and how does money flow in Web3? How are artists getting paid? How will labels and publishers get paid? What does that look like? And that is not just, what is the motivation for the fan to open up their wallets, but what are the different technologies and kind of motivations to be able to get them engaged at a level that they want to pay. So I'd like to ask all of you great panelists, introduce yourselves, and then we'll get into it.
So, hi, my name is Nigel Eccles. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Vault Labs, which has developed the Vault music, or digital music format.
I'm Kristin Epstein. I head up music at Screenwave Media, where gaming and music comes together, and we're taking those conversations and bringing them to light. My background's a little bit more in the royalty payment processing, turned to talent management, turned from YouTube, and now I'm here. So I have a lot of knowledge from that label experience, from that creator economy experience.
I'm Roneil. I'm one of the co-founders of this project called Audius. We're a music community and discovery platform that puts the artist in control and serve about 6.5 million fans every month, around 200,000 artists or so. Excited to be here and share a little more.
I'm Dan Smith, GM of Armada for the US. We have artists like Armin van Buuren, Loud Luxury, who just crossed 1 billion streams, and a couple artists that are doing interesting projects in Web3.
That's great. So let's go a little bit deeper and have each of you guys talk about, more detail about what your companies are doing, what problems you're trying to solve, and just, we're trying to stay away from a lot of acronyms so everybody can understand all of the Web3 world a little bit easier.
Sure. Well, let me start. So my background is I've served 20 years in the tech industry, and we kind of had a joke in the tech industry that if a startup talks about its revenue from T-shirts, it's obviously not doing that well. The weird thing is in music that artists do talk a lot about their merch revenue, and we sort of thought of that as like, this is weird. What we often see is artists trying to monetize everything around the music. In fact, some people in tech would say, well, you should give that away for free, which I think is a laughable suggestion. We sort of went the other way and said, what if we started to make music more premium? What if we actually said, there's some music that's not going to do that well on DSPs. There's some music that only top fans will pay for, but those fans would pay a lot of money for. And when we started to explore that, what we realized was there isn't a format today for that. Well, the formats today that exist are like vinyl and CD, which are really vintage formats. And I love vinyl. I collect vinyl, but it's a terrible format, right? Like, it is not mobile. The number of times I've bought a record and then played it on Spotify is just countless because it's not convenient. The sort of music I like is not the same as my 10-year-old likes. So we're reliant on these formats. I think vinyl is really complementary. That's great. It's great that people collect it, but it, to me, reflects an underlying problem, which is for artists, there is no way for them to sort of say package this music and sell it direct to their fans. And so we started sort of thinking, how could we build something? How could we create a format that's totally digital, that a fan could just buy it on a website or buy it in a mobile app and then play it, and they would actually own it. So by that we mean that it would be exclusive. Only the people who buy it could actually play it, and that they actually would have ownership. That means they could play it on multiple players, they could sell it, they could gift it. We started working on that about a year and a half ago. It is built on Web3. It's actually built on NFT technology, but we never mention that word in the product because users do not care. What they care about is they're getting unique music from artists that they love. So we've built the Vault format, and we're now working with emerging artists, and we're very focused on small emerging artists. We have done some larger ones like Fletcher. That's great. She was kind of exceptional. But really our focus is artists of between 10,000 and 200,000 monthly listeners, because what we can do is we can drive real incremental revenue to them. And that's the way it works. So basically, we work with an artist. They give us 3 types of music that we perform really well, which is unreleased music, alternative versions, and live recordings. We do a lot of live recordings here in New York. And then what we do is we basically package that into an EP or even a deluxe single, and then we market it on our platform. And a number of them have been selling out, and for a number of the artists, what they're seeing is equivalent, and this is for emerging artists, equivalent revenues from this that they're seeing from the DSP. So that's what we're building. It's complementary. We've never said to an artist, like, come off Spotify. We've just said, there's some stuff that you're getting almost no traffic on Spotify. This is somewhere that your top fans love. Give it something unique for them.
That's great. Yeah, and to kind of go off of that a little bit, what Nigel was saying, there are so many communities that crave this kind of engagement. And you think of the gaming community as a community that has always wanted more ways to engage, wanted more worlds to live in, wanted to be able to do more in those worlds. And that's why we have all these open world games like Tears of the Kingdom. The new Zelda game is this wide open world. It's a finished game at release, like so many amazing things going on there. But when you're living in a world in this space, in the gaming space, and you have to go to another platform to talk about that world, and it's from, we used to have strategy and walkthrough guides that then moved online and then turned into Reddit communities and turned into, what gaming looks like with the creator economy. And that's kind of what I was at the forefront with, what Screenwave was at the forefront of, was, okay, how do we take these communities that were being built in these games? How do we connect them? How do we allow people to really like UGC content and all of that? How do we make that happen? And it hasn't existed in the place where they're living. You experience the game, but you're not transacting in the game. You're not able to have that connection in the game. So everyone went everywhere else. If you're familiar with Discord, if you're at a Web3 panel, you probably are, because the NFT community has embraced Discord. Gamers started there. That's how they would communicate with each other, was through Discord. It didn't happen in game. A lot of indie games don't have the resources to make it happen in game. So really, when I see this Web3 conversation, I see it as the creator economy came to solve this problem. And the creator economy is driven by advertisers. And while we love that, we love those advertisers, and this really gives the ability for fans to support artists directly and have it exist in a world. And that's why I think it's so important to get involved, coming from that YouTube world, coming from that gaming world. Let's put that all together. Let's have the world you're living in, that game world, also be the world where you support your favorite artists and your favorite creators, and bring it all together. And a lot of people are thinking about how do we have the tools to make that happen? But really, it's how do we empower these artists in a way that other platforms haven't been able to do, just the way that it's set up. And I think that's the most important part of the monetization connection here.
Yeah, so in our case, I mentioned that we put the artist and rights holder in control, right, of this community discovery experience. What we really mean by that, or kind of unpacking that a little bit further, what Audius creates for the folks using it is this free market around both engagement and content. So as a creator on Audius or a rights holder working in concert with that creator, you can actually design pricing, monetization structures that you want. If you want to charge $10,000 every time someone listens to your content, that's great. If you don't want to charge anything at all, that's great too. These tools have no opinion, don't care how they're used, but really, I guess philosophically, like the reason for why this is structured this way, and I think why this has been resonating with our community, is that the existing monetization schemes for content online are very one-size-fits-all, right? You can either pay for a recurrent subscription, or you can have an ad-supported experience. And as a fan, on the artist side, you're putting content into a black box, and money comes out of it, and you don't really have a clear connection to what's driving that money. And more importantly, you don't have a relationship with or any control or agency around the relationship with the fans that are actually generating that activity, right? So, so similar to what Nigel said, like Audius is certainly not kind of replacing Spotify or Apple Music or any of those major DSPs. What we're seeking to do is really to give creators, rights holders, the power to better segment that audience that they have, and then the more highly engaged segments of that fan base start to give them a unique, different experience at a different price point, right? So some of those different engagement mechanisms, what they actually look like in practice are things like tip-gated content. So as a fan, if you tip the artist, you can get access to some portion of catalog. You can also do NFT gating. So if as a fan you own an NFT from a given artist collection, you can actually have a permission set of content available there, and also permissioned mechanisms for engagement around that. So there's some really fun mechanics that folks in our community have been exploring and playing with around that. I think the model is starting to work, but to what Vickie said, the key difference is it's working in proportion to how much time, energy, and kind of work that artist teams and the people around them are actually putting into making it successful, right? Because what fans are responding to here is that opportunity to feel closer to the artist, to feel part of a community that they're not able to get with other experiences today. And we think that's really only possible when there is that direct connection between the artist and fan, and the control that comes with that.
And then from the label perspective, essentially what we're looking at all of these tools, like our peer-to-peer, we look at it as a way to encourage fandom, ultimately, because we're in the business of breaking artists, making sure their fans can interact with them in special ways. And for us, Web3 is more of just another tool of way to do that. In 20 years ago, it wasn't Web3, it was something else. The pipes have changed, but really it's the same structure of marketing. We have one example would be Armin van Buren. He's the biggest artist on the label, one of our founders. We have a Discord of around 30,000 active super fans, and these are people that have paid money for extra access. They paid money for exclusive merch, extra access to events. A few weeks ago, we had him in town, and we had maybe 50 super fans over to our office to hear unreleased demos, essentially. And this is like a special thing that we could have done without Web3, but because we had Web3, because the pipes were there, it was really easy for us to just go into the Discord and say, hey, who's in town? Do you guys want to come meet Armin? If you're a big fan, like, why wouldn't you want to do that? And it became like a really special moment where it's literally 50 people around essentially a conference table listening to records. Like, they were having the time of their lives. Some of the people flew in from Mexico or like all over the country. And to me, that's really the most exciting part about this. Like I said, the pipes have changed, but really the structure is the same. We're breaking artists, and the monetization aspect of it is really just, what do fans want? And we're here to deliver that. If they want NFTs, we give them NFTs. If they want exclusive merch, sure. If that comes bundled with an NFT, all good. All we want to do is make sure our fans are happy and super serve them.
So it's so great to listen to the diversity of the problems that all these companies are trying to solve. And if you think about our existing models that we have, rewinding before streaming really took hold, there were all sorts of companies that were trying different models. And over the course of licensing and market factors, a lot of those companies went away, and we ended up with on-demand streaming as this dominant model. Labels get 55 to 58%, publishers get 10 to 15%. There's a little bit of margin for the platform. And fans came on board, not necessarily because they wanted to express fandom, but it's almost like a utility that they can't, you can't live without music when you're a music fan. And so the problem that on-demand streaming solved was really about this value proposition. One low price, get everything that's ever been recorded, but you're really not expressing fandom. What are you doing? You're like, oh, I streamed your song. That isn't really that meaningful, but it is a utility, and that's kind of the motivation of how money gets transacted in this world. UGC and social platforms, different problems there. But what we're seeing here is not all fans, but a subset of fans who are there for a different reason. They're there to engage more deeply with the artist. But these, artist to fan platforms have always had difficulty because there wasn't really a meaningful way to congregate people. Is it email? Social platforms and the algorithm change. So talk a little bit about what is that subset of fans, and is that subset really where this 1,000 true fans and the monetization is the most powerful?
Yeah, so I've done actually quite a lot of analysis on this, and it's really fascinating, and some of it's actually not been published because I had to pull it together myself. But if we look back at 2000, the music industry followed sometimes called a Pareto business, a par law. So the top 5% of fans generated about 80% of the industry's revenue. And those fans were spending between $500 and $1,000 a year, and that's inflation adjusted. So what is that? That's like 1 to 2 CDs a week. So in fact, I'm sure there's some people in this room that are in that category. But if you think about it, when people say, oh, this is only 5%, this is a niche of music fans, this was 80% of the industry. Those same fans today are actually generated a dramatically smaller amount because they're only spending $120 a year on recorded music. So we're actually talking about a smaller group, 5% of fans, but a 5% of fans that historically drove 80% of the revenues. And the big problem today is that we're totally reliant on a single format that is terrible at monetizing those top fans. Now, those top fans, in my view, have not changed. They still love these bands, and if they were given something to say, this is something unique that only a small number of people get it, or true fans are getting it, they will pay for it. I spent 20 years in the sports industry, and we saw this in sports. Like, the sports industry kept coming up with new products, like new slice. Like, NFL is a master at slicing their rights and getting fans to buy those. Music industry is terrible at it. Like, just to give you an idea, in another industry, the gaming industry, which is about the same size as music 20 years ago, today the games industry is 5 times bigger across, and they have at least 5 different formats that they can, they sell games to fans that are over $1 billion in size, whereas music has got 1, well, maybe 2 with vinyl now in North America. So the opportunity here, which I think could be transformational in the industry, is finding new ways to monetize these top fans. And this is not something that, adds, adding $1 into the cost of Spotify will add. We can do the math, it adds another 7%. But what this could do is actually dramatically increase the size of the industry because you're really monetizing those top fans.
And I see a lot of labels in the audience, some familiar faces for sure. And I'm sure this is not the conversation you thought you were getting into today because everyone's thinking about licensing. How do I license my catalog? It's something that was talked about in the fan engagement portion of this. And, our brains are built for that. How do we license? How do we license? And it's really, how do we maximize? How do we maximize what we already have? Like your assets still have value here. But the value that they have is that you're able to find those people who want to give you more, who value your assets higher than, just a transactional, one-time fan would. So when you sit there and you think about, okay, well, Web3, tools, licensing, community, well, really, tools and licensing is where everyone's bogged down. But really, community is what you should be thinking about, and that you're given this opportunity. And I was a little skeptical in the beginning because I saw the tools that were out there. I saw how expensive it was to mint an NFT. I saw that I had to hire a community manager to run a Discord community to be able to teach people what their perks were and to have education. And it was on my back as a manager and as a label to educate how this all works. And I think we're moving away from that, and we're moving into the tools of the platform are actually providing some of that education that, no, this is a way that you actually support artists, and this is a way that you find those communities, and you can live in that world where you're able to support. And I know it's like, it was hard for me to kind of retrain my brain in that way, where it's like, it's all about finding a place of engagement. And the gaming community kind of sought to Twitch, which is, most people are familiar with Twitch at this point. It is, a streaming community, mostly of gamers, but it has also kind of gone beyond that at this point. And kind of something I love about Twitch is the level of fan engagement that you get, where there's subscriptions, there's elevated ways for people to see in the chat and to be recognized for being top supporters and things like that. But it's incredibly hard on the artists to stream 4 hours a day, 7 days a week, or they lose those fans. And they have no other way to engage with them. It started out as a discoverability platform. Now it is, a platform where you can have that engaging community, but that just goes away if you stop streaming. That community has no place to live, versus creating these types of Web3 experiences. It takes kind of that issue of, okay, well, now they go away, and gives a place for them to continue to contribute. And fans just want to contribute. They really do. And super fans, and they might not be a super fan of your particular artist forever, but they'll go on to another artist and become their super fan, and they'll keep going around. Like, we think of it as, the artists that we love change, our tastes change and evolve, but think more about how do we create these experiences for the top fans at the time, rather than how do we license a catalog and leverage it in that way.
Well, I think Nigel and Kristin just covered both community and fan segmentation really well, so I'm not going to repeat those, but definitely agree with everything you both just said. I'll just add quickly. I think the paradigm shift that these tools are creating is from one of horizontal engagement, meaning you as a rights holder, as a creator, are working with many different platforms that are all compartmentalized from one another, right? Where there's not cross communication, where data is not shared between them, and oftentimes that data is not making it back to you either, to a future that's somewhat more vertically integrated rather than horizontally, which is to say that these tools do give you back control of that data and agency with that data, and the ability to carry that data between different experiences, right? If you were to use, both of what Nigel's built and what we've built, you can use them in concert, and they can actually play off of each other in neat ways, right? And that's, I think, what's really powerful about this approach. So vertically integrating, of course, means there's more efficiencies to gain from not having as many middle people there and what have you. But I think the much more interesting point there is really that level of control that you can reclaim, right? That maintaining a through line all the way from you're putting a piece of content out into the world all the way to every single fan that is touching that content across all the different places that they do. So yeah, there's I think a lot of financial opportunity there because of that kind of restructuring of how this value chain works.
And I think to loop back to the 1,000 true fans part of it, you hit the nail on the head. It's a paradigm shift, because what we see when we're marketing to fans is, millennials, if you look at from the top level, millennials, they couldn't afford to own things anymore. Then Gen Zs don't want to own things anymore. And now we're at a point where everything is about an experience. So, music has historically just been a transaction-based business where you're transacting, you're licensing, you're selling something. And now Web3 is one of the things that I think has really shifted that to where we have to think about things differently. We have to deliver experiences, whether that's digitally or in person, whether it's, something that can power you as a true fan to get early access to a ticket before it, becomes like $3,000 on an open market, or if it's something on a smaller scale or digitally where we're delivering something where, maybe it's a Roblox or a sandbox and you can go in and interact. That's a digital experience, but it's still an experience. And I think the more, as a label, the more we shift into delivering experiences and not just transactions, we have a tighter relationship with our fans. We have more feedback. Discord has been, like, for me, an eye-opening thing, because I don't really come from the gaming world. And having artists have active Discords and you have that instant feedback, like, that's something that's valuable that we didn't always have before. Like, just 10 years ago, we were waiting for call-out research at radio, and how does that work? They give you a phone call and play 15 seconds of the song and say, did you like it? Like, that's not exactly the same kind of interaction. So right now, it's a really interesting time because we have a full feedback loop, and we can deliver experiences to our fans, and we can say, hey, what do you guys like? What do you want? Like, let's give it to you.
Yeah, it's really great to hear you talk about that, about not only kind of like how this is different from the past, but how fans actually have a stake in it, and their opinion actually matters. When we think about business models and how money flows in our industry right now, because we have these kind of commodity business models of all the on-demand streaming services are basically the same. You also have problems that are occurring in all of the platforms. And so some labels and publishers have said things to me about Web3 like, well, but they're all different, we have to, it's so much work to try to figure out, well, this one is different than that one, and, the business models are not comparable, so we can't really compare them. But I think to any of the labels in the room, it's actually really important that we have diverse business models right now, because the existing models, I think at the outset, when on-demand streaming was set up, and even some of the social and UGC platforms, it's basically volume-based and saying every stream is the same value, and then the bigger artists and the more streams that occur, you'll get paid, and there's kind of a democratization of that. But what that doesn't do is address that fans really, really want to engage more deeply, and that when we created that $9.99 business model, to your point, Nigel, it was really done because everyone looked at the consumers at that time, that the average person bought one CD a month. So they listened to radio, and so the model was created for the masses to have something that would be palatable to spend $120 a year, which was a stretch for them. But we lopped off the top of the pyramid. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's really where all of these platforms are, talking about engagement, and engagement leads to monetization. So if we think about just kind of the bones of what is motivating people to spend money, mm-hmm. Maybe we start with you, because you've done so much as a label with your specific artists. Is this, what are you finding is the motivating factor with artists? Is it about fans getting closer to the artist? Is it about their opinions? Is it about engaging with each other?
Yeah, I think the rules haven't changed. We've just now been able to finally hear the fans. We hear back from them. I mean, I really started heavily into the business at like the start of streaming, and this was like, it was always a challenge because you'd get a song on a playlist, and then, you know, how do you build a fan from somebody that just discovered you in the mix of 50 tracks? So, you know, for us, it's like, you know, fans still want the same things. They want merch, they want exclusive experiences. Now that there's more interesting, engaging stuff online, like there's interactive things that they can do, whether it's, you know, a gaming experience or a metaverse experience too. But, you know, aside from that, like the fans, they want to collect things. They want to be involved in cool events, and it hasn't really changed what they want. Really, it's just changed as how we can deliver it to them. Like, to me, the biggest light bulb moment was when I realized, so I could use this digital wallet and deliver fans things directly. It's kind of like an email list, but now I can actually give them things. So it's almost like your email fan contact list like times 10, because you can now power experiences if you collect the right information and if you're serving them and hearing back from them.
Yeah, I think we've seen a really similar experience from the users of Audius as well. Like, fans are motivated to purchase these things, tip their favorite creators, things like that, because they actually have an opportunity to get noticed for that behavior because of the data that's flowing back to the folks offering these things. So as some fun examples we've seen, we've actually seen artists go and reward the first 20 fans to go repost a track after it's been released. So they'll actually say, you know, because they can now identify who those people are, and they can like transfer a token to them or something like that. So so it's been really cool to see those sort of things actually, those emergent behaviors happening in practice. There's nothing like, you know, native to the Audius network that allowed that, other than just the data being there and a motivated artist saying, well, I'm gonna go find that data now and do something cool with it, right? That's, I think, the cool thing, that from the fan perspective, there's almost this like random interval reward potential there, because they know they are now identified as being close to the artist. There's also a kind of a neat thing. If you tip an artist on Audius, you get ranked in this list of supporters that's public. And then based on, you know, how much different folks have tipped, they actually rank differently, and then they can like compete with one another to try to be the top supporter. The top 10 get showed on the artist page, so those top 10 slots end up becoming things people compete over. So it's fun to see all that. But it's, yeah, really to your points, like the opportunity to be identified as someone who's close to the artist, and also to just feel close to the artist, we've seen be a really strong motivating factor for our fans.
And this is, I want to go to Kristin, because we're really talking about a lot of gaming methodologies here. And one of the things, you know, with gaming industry, you know, music industry loves friction. You know, love friction around licensing, around getting people on board. You have to put a credit card in. You can't do any of this without all of these layers of friction. Gaming industry is about no friction, global distribution, and then monetizing everything in app on engagement, and things like leaderboards, and being able to demonstrate that, you know, you are, you know, that you've leveled up. You know, Kristin, talk a little bit about this, because you're really deep in the gaming world, and I know the other night we were having this conversation in the bar, you know, but let's revisit that of what are those gaming methodologies that are being woven throughout Web3, and why do they work?
Right, and it's really relying on the tech to be able to facilitate these experiences, rather than your artist sitting there making 300 TikToks in hopes that one of them will engage somebody, and then not being able to get whoever is on TikTok over to stream on a different platform. It's about having tech that supports that, and in very, very early tech, Web3 rather, the tech wasn't necessarily at that point, and that's why I came into it, okay, we're not there yet. But I think we're getting to the point where those tools that the gaming industry employed are starting to be implemented. into these technologies. So a big way to support projects has always been Kickstarter, but a good way to support artists and creatives in general, Patreon coming on the scene. So from that perspective, offering just like a little bit more extra content is something that is like a one-to-many connection that feels like a one-to-one connection. So with the leaderboards example in a game, it is very relatively easy to implement a leaderboard, but there's a community and camaraderie that comes from that type of endorphin hit of being on that board. There are ways to collaborate on a particular problem, whether you're going through a dungeon or something and you're working together. But the tech really needs to come first on this, because if you have any kind of level of, okay, well, this doesn't work, you're going to put it down, you're not going to live in that space. We need to create tech where you can live in it. And Dan spoke about a little bit about Roblox. And if you are a parent or have a child in your life, you've probably heard about Roblox. If not, it's really the example of the metaverse that we thought we were getting as adults, but was given to primarily children. And with a game like that, you can live in a server where you can play with people together. You can offer kind of in-game perks and things like that, and you can do that all in the same place. So I think the biggest lesson that we should learn from gaming is, you need to create something that is fun to be in, whether, what you're listening to, what you're playing, it all has to integrate together. And any single one portion of it that doesn't feel cohesive, it needs to be a good partnership. You can't just throw music on there. You can't just throw art in a space. And kind of my criticism of NFT galleries is you're throwing NFTs on a wall in a room, and you can walk around, you can look, but it doesn't feel like you're really there. So, and that's something that gaming has always been able to accomplish. You feel like you're there. You feel like you're immersed. You don't realize that you're in a room and you're not physically with these people and connecting those experiences together.
It's really true, because I think for many people in the room, if you're not gamers, and if you don't have kids who are gamers, there's something that's escaping people right now, which is that, not just because of the pandemic. The pandemic definitely accelerated the sense of community and belonging that is coming through virtual worlds and through games. And I think a lot of these things right now are, a lot of this movement is going to be defined by generation. It's going to be defined by kids who are probably 16 and under. And they will be the ones who will be shaping what these experiences are like. And it is meaningful. There was a recent Deloitte study that came out around, the proportion of young people who are finding really, really meaningful friendships, relationships, and, their equivalent of, we used to get on bicycles and ride around the neighborhood after school. Kids get in Roblox and Fortnite, and they engage with each other as avatars, and that's meaningful. And I think there's something in there for artists to figure out, well, what does that look like for an artist? And Nigel, I want to start with you on this, is one of the problems that we've always had with artist-centric initiatives in music is that artists want to be artists. They want to go in the recording studio, they want to tour, they want to create music. They don't necessarily want to be in all these platforms, but I think these technologies are enabling a different kind of scalability. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, one of my complaints with a lot of products over the last 5 years is it's kind of devalued music. It's kind of said, oh yeah, the music is kind of like the entry ticket, we should give away for free, and what we're going to do is you're going to have to build community and you're going to have to manage. And it's as if we were sort of saying to artists that actually we're going to value as a community manager, and I think that's disastrous. I think what we've seen over the last 10 years is some artists are great. Like some artists do Patreons and they manage that community through the touring cycle and off their off cycle. I think that's probably less than 5% of artists that are really good at that. I think most artists, and I think we should value them for this, are great at creating great music, and that what should be sort of put front and center. We did a lot of surveys of, because what Web3 brings, and Web3 boomed and bust, and it's a victim of its own excess, I'll be totally honest. But it's still an amazing technology that it can actually give ownership of a digital good. Like that itself is amazing. I still think we're really early on seeing what the impact of that is. We did a lot of studies with why people bought on the Vol platform, because in our platform we can people can put in video, they can put in pictures, they can put in voice memos, and we can even link to physical products. So we can send you vinyl if you buy it, or you can use a ticket to get into an event. We discovered the -- reason why people wanted to buy was they wanted access to exclusive music, which I thought was really rewarding, right? It was, the other stuff is great, but what they really wanted is they wanted ownership of exclusive music from an artist they loved. And that was really like rewarding. We were like, wow, that's what they want. All of this other stuff was great, but that's what really mattered. And if you break that down, what does that mean? Well, ownership. We can only deliver that with Web3. I can't, I can own a physical album. What does that mean? It means I can lend it to a friend, I can resell it, I can gift it. That means something. That's why people collect. And that's why people collected NFTs, because they got this idea of ownership. So that's the first one. I have ownership. It's exclusive. If this is available everywhere else, it just doesn't feel as special. And then the third part is super important, which is an artist they love. That is table stakes, right? But people historically didn't just Venmo money to artists they love. There needs to be some sort of transaction. And that's where we think Web3 is really interesting, is it gives ownership, it allows there to be a transaction, but it's giving them the thing that's the most important, which is the music.
And thoughts from the rest of you about what is that exchange of value between artists and fans that's going to open up monetization?
Yeah, I can chime in here. I actually agreed a lot with Kristin, what you said, which is it's that parasocial relationship that from the artist it's one-to-many, but from the fan feeling like it's one-to-one and feeling like there's a relationship there. But that said, I mean, I think there are a lot of different artists come in all kind of shapes and sizes and also have different desires for how they want to engage. Just as an anecdotal example, we definitely see far higher engagement happening with these community building tools on Audius from folks in dance and hip hop communities than we have from other areas of music. And there's nothing wrong with any other ways of making music, but there was something very grassroots about the way that many of the artists in those two areas came up and found their fans and found their path, that they very naturally made that transition to being able to spend time on time with these community building platforms. So, whichever direction you go in there, I think there is a ton of real value to be had from being able to identify who those super fans are, sell them things, and hyper serve them. The question is, do you identify those fans by selling them things first, or do you identify them by building up community and then kind of segmenting that community over time? I don't think there's a right answer to that question. Obviously, we've kind of taken the latter approach, but we've seen a lot of artists say, I want to keep my focus on producing and shipping music, and I don't really want to talk to my fans. It's fine too. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't think those artists are well suited to using our tools, but there's other great ways for them to engage too. So.
I think it's easy to think that you know who those fans are and to go into the conversation and be like, yeah, of course, I know who my top fans are. I know who comes to the shows. I know all of that. But I've seen so many people, they have 20, 40 million streams, and I book them in a venue in Boston, and they can't fill a 300-person venue. They probably couldn't fill a 100-person venue, and it just doesn't always translate. You think you have these fans that are deeply engaging, and you don't actually know who they are unless you seek them out in this way and give them value for leading on to the fact that they are those super fans. Yeah.
And ultimately, it just becomes giving those fans access, whether it's access to exclusive music or access to a show or to an event or to some sort of experience. Like, that's ultimately what it comes down for us as a label. We want to give access, and that's what we do. We charge for that access, especially in dance music, like from the most minor thing, like just an online engagement thing, or to a show. A lot of our artists play at clubs, and like, when you go to a club, what is the entire night is about access. Are you on the list? And that's kind of what Web3 is becoming for some of our artists. Are you on the list? Are you part of this in-crowd? And it should be an artist where people want to be part of that in-crowd. So the psychology is the same, but we're just using different tools to do it.
That's so great. We are out of time. I would love to just sit and ask these guys more and more questions because your perspectives are so valuable. We are going to come back and do some, like in an hour or so, we're going to do some, kind of future and questions. But please, round of applause. Yeah. Let's do one question.
Did you say that one of your artists was the victim of getting a Grammy?
No.
There was a downside to it?
No.
So what was the downside the downside to the success of what was it you were talking about? That there was some sort of pendulum swinging the other way?
Oh, Web3 is a victim. Web3. So the excesses we saw with NFTs and Web3 last year, that was very negative for the whole Web3 community. No.
I think it just became something that people started conflating crypto and crypto.
It was all sort of pure about speculation and excesses, and not the technology itself is very powerful. I think it got ahead of itself.
But it's also this is a pattern that we have with technology, is that when there's new technology that's unleashed, embraces music, there's usually all sorts of problems that occur. There's a separating wheat from chaff, and then there's companies that then come out and say we want to do things with music in a more meaningful way, and that's, I think, the phase that we're in. But please, a round of applause for these panelists.
Thank you.